Hello, music lovers of the world. Welcome to episode 39 of What Makes This Song Special, the show where every week I take a little desert island disc of my own. I talk about what makes the song special to me, what does it remind me of in my past. I'll then talk a little bit about the song and the singer, and then I'll follow up with a part two where I will do my own cover version of the song. This week, rather than a story, usually it's a story, this week just a quick short one, really more of a time in my life that this song takes me back to as opposed to a story. For me, it was 1990, end of 1990. I was about 8 years old. I just returned from living in Italy during the World Cup, which I spoke about in a previous episode a few weeks ago. You can have a listen, a watch if you want. We'd moved into a street called Flinders Avenue in Clarkston in the south side of Glasgow. And we were sort of trying to get used to living in Scotland again after having some time in another country, of course. And me and my younger brothers were the new boys in the neighbourhood, something that we've become accustomed to being with all the moving around that we did when we were younger. And the good thing was that we always had each other, so we would head out to the front of whatever house we'd moved into. This time it was, of course, Flinders Avenue, which I mentioned, and we would take a ball out with us, and usually before long, someone would have walked past and asked to join in or challenged us to a game. This happened everywhere we went. Football is this universal language. I remember even in Germany, once or twice we couldn't speak a word of German, and the kids in the neighbourhood couldn't speak any English, and we still managed to make some friends for an afternoon and play games of football. So this happened everywhere we went, and being in Scotland in a new neighbourhood was no different. I think within 10 minutes of us going out for the first time when we moved into the house, we were joined by three brothers, pretty much exactly the same ages as me and my brothers, who lived about 2 or 3 doors up, called the O'Donnells. Perfect scenario. Within an hour or so, there was another few kids that lived in the neighbourhood who decided to join in as well. My friend Matthew McSeveny, Kenny Forsyth, all these guys who lived in the street and we became really good friends with. And we, put some jackets down as goalposts, tried to dribble around cars, never mind just players. And if you fell, it was concrete, stone, your knees would be cut open, blood pouring from your legs, and you would get pulled into the house by your mum and rubbed alcohol all over you and all that kind of stuff. It was brutal times, old school days, and it was also right at the advent of games consoles, computers. I remember my cousin Peter coming around one weekend with a Nintendo Game Boy, and it was the first of any of those types of things we'd ever seen. We'd never seen a device like that before. I remember us all taking turns at Super Mario Brothers on the Nintendo, and just being absolutely gobsmacked at how good the graphics were, which seems ridiculous now, considering the graphics were, in terms of what's available and possible today, were absolutely dreadful. But at the time, the graphics were fantastic. We were like, wow, this is like so impressive, so realistic. It was a magical time to be a kid. It was the perfect balance, I think, of having technology, but still not having technology take over your life the way it kind of does nowadays for kids. It wasn't enough for you to be completely addicted to technology. You could still make up games to play when you were bored, and for some reason, I don't think the games were as addictive. I remember being quite addicted to computer games at points, but not in the same way as kids are now. You would still get bored of a computer game after playing it for an hour, and then spend the rest of the day in the garden playing with a ball or playing hide and seek or whatever it would be. Around that time as well, music in the charts was still mostly great. There was still some great songs coming out, and it was around about that time as well that Home Alone first came out. There were great kids films like The Witches, My Girl, Kindergarten Cop, I remember the Turtles had become a big hit as well. I remember us dressing up as turtles for Halloween that year. We were all obsessed with these crazy Ninja Turtles named after Italian Renaissance painters for some reason. Just kind of a bonkers programme, but a kind of bonkers time. A really strange time, but great. End of the 80s, start of the 90s, just I think a great time to be a kid. Maybe that's what everybody feels about their childhood, or I hope that is the case. I hope every child or every person feels that when they were a kid it was a perfect time. I really do feel it was a great time for us. Anyway, there are a few songs that take me back to that time in that house. In fact, I've mentioned a few of them in previous episodes. Of course, we had 2 years in that house before moving back to Italy for a much longer period of time afterwards, which I mentioned, I think, way back in the Simply Red Stars episodes, maybe episode 2 or 3. But for those 2 years, we had a great time, I remember. And songs that remind me of that time, Bon Jovi New Jersey album, Poison's Flesh and Blood album, Wind of Change by the Scorpions. I've done covers of most of these bands and artists. And of course the incredible Ice Ice Baby by Vanilla Ice, which always reminds me of that era as well, but I didn't really want to do a rap cover. I don't think I'm cut out for that. But the one that really sums up those 2 years for me, the one that really takes me back there is Chesney Hawkes, the one and only, today's song. It actually makes me quite emotional when I hear it now, that song. It's such a feel-good, nostalgic song. It's got these incredible key changes, just top-notch musicality throughout. It sort of transports me back to playing in the street with childhood pals, all of us wondering and dreaming and hoping about what we could achieve and what we would become as we became adults. We were all going to be rock stars and footballers and skateboarders and actors all at once. It was just a great time, full of innocence, starting to get a little bit of independence to be allowed to go out and play with our mates in the neighbourhood, staying up late, playing dares, keeping secrets, stuff that makes being a kid so much better than being an adult, you know. And it was the island of Great Britain, of course, so I'm positive that it probably rained most of the time that we lived there, but I genuinely only really remember sunny days from that time. I remember those 2 years just always being kind of good weather. Maybe we had some good weather summers in Scotland for once, and I remember us skateboarding down the hill outside our house, playing football in each other's gardens, cycling our bikes around the block, asking our parents for 5 more minutes as it got darker and darker outside in the summers. You know, great memories. And I think stuff that everybody can relate to. I'm sure everybody watching will have a song that reminds them of a summer or those types of summers when they were a kid. So leave a comment if you've got, you know, a summer or a song, for instance, that reminds you of times like that, being a carefree child and just hanging out with your pals. So yeah, as I said, not really a story today, more of a just this is what it reminds me of. The One and Only was written by Nick Kershaw, who was a singer-songwriter who had many of his own hits in the 80s, but also wrote and collaborated in many other projects with the likes of Genesis, Elton John, Bonnie Tyler, and many others. The song was released by Chesney Hawkes in February 1991, so just a couple of months, maybe 3 or 4 months maybe after we moved into the street. And the songwriting from Kershaw on this track is exceptional. I mean, it's just, I honestly think, as good as the anthemic sing-along chorus is, the verses are my favourite part. I love the verse. I think the verse is so incredible. It's so melodic, and the way it changes key down to the verse from the chorus. And there are lots of key changes in the song that I think that just makes it so interesting. Something you don't hear a lot of, sadly, anymore in songwriting. Everything's like 4 chords and repetitive. This song really takes you on a journey. And yet it still manages to be a really accessible, fun pop song, even though it's quite a complex song when you break it down musically. It sort of keeps you on your toes throughout the track, and then this big modulation for the guitar solo near the end, which then sort of ingeniously switches back to the original key for the final chorus. Just great songwriting, like really, really intelligent songwriting. I think it might be my favourite one-hit wonder of all time. It's certainly the best one I can think of off the top of my head right now. I've got a few favourite one-hit wonders, but I think this might be the best one-hit wonder ever. If you can think of a better one, or if you agree, leave a wee comment underneath. Be good to have a wee debate about one-hit wonders. But yeah, Chesney Hawkes. It's hard to do a real vocal coach analysis on Chesney Hawkes because I genuinely haven't heard a lot of him singing. Other than this song, I can't think of any other songs that I've really heard him singing on. The live versions are a little pitchy at times, but he's a really nice pop voice. He's got a really nice listenable tone, really clean sound, and a great range in this song too. I mean, it gets up pretty high. It's powerful where it needs to be, and those dynamic choices really work. I think they work well for the song and the story of the song. I definitely don't think another vocalist would have done a better job on this song. I really do think it's a perfect song in every way, really, in my opinion. And I think that includes his vocal performance. It just, everything works really well, you know. So yeah, so there you have it. As I promised, a short episode this week. Not so much of an event that a song reminds me of this time, but just a time in my life, a couple of years where that song played often. I mean, that song, I don't think I even bought the song. It would have been cassette at the time, but I don't think I ever bought the cassette of this song. I think it was just always on the radio. It was playing in the background when you went into shops. It was on the TV all the time. It was on Top of the Pops. It was in my head. It was in my head, and it became the soundtrack to summer nights of the early 90s, being 9 or 10 years old, having great pals, dreaming of what we would become when we get older, and not realising that we were already experiencing some of the best times of our lives right there and then. So great times, great memories, a great song, and hopefully a great episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment. What makes this song special to you? If it does, hit subscribe, hit like, share the song, please. Click for part 2 and listen to me do my own piano version of the one and only. And I'll see you next week. Thank you so much.